Hi, Alan Stratton from As Wood Turns. In the last video I turned an eccentric candlestick, kind of like this one that we'll do for this week, except that it was 3 or 4 inches longer, and it was an interesting experience. I hadn't done one for a while, and so I decided this time I'd try to work on some of the areas that I found difficult and see what I could do to improve them and make a shorter twisted axis candlestick this time. The improvements this time are, one, I used a plug on the end. This one goes into the holes that were drilled for the cup and for the ballast, and then made circles out here, and then when I decided on my diameter I drilled little holes here. Because the problem oftentimes with the eccentric is that you're out here and then it's twisted and your center doesn't like to seat down, and under the pressure of the turning it can pop away. So this is designed so that it can stay put and keep secure. So it fits in the hole on one end and then the centers on the other end, one for each end. The other thing that I did is to make this jig, which is just a couple of dowels with 2 ends that have legs and a centerpiece with a probe in it. This is designed to be able to go into the tenon that's on both ends so that it has a stable base, and then I can position the center at the neckline or actually anywhere else and assess the depth of that and make sure that I'm at least getting fairly consistent on that. So this helped a little bit. These helped a lot, and so let's turn this multi-axis candlestick with a twist.
I already mounted this butternut between centers and rounded it to a cylinder. I will be drilling both ends of this cylinder, so I'm cutting a tenon on both ends with my skew. Then I can drill 1-inch holes. The top hole is deep enough for the metal candle cup plus the tenon. If not deep enough, I can drill a little bit more later, but this may be enough. The bottom hole is deeper so that I can add ballast later. On my computer, I drew concentric circles and 3 rays at 120 degrees separation. The intersections at a given distance are potential offsets for the project. After printing, I glued my pattern to a couple of plywood discs for this project. There is a 1-inch plug at the center that will center everything in the holes that I just drilled. On the flip side, I drilled 3/4-inch holes at my selected distance. These holes are only about 1/4 inch deep to help hold my centers in place when offset later when turning. Now I have slipped the discs into the end holes and mounted the wood back on the lathe after aligning with a 60-degree offset for the twist. I also put a dab of hot melt glue to prevent accidental twisting. Now for the fun part as I cut air and a little bit of wood. I'm aiming for a gradual cove with the cove bottom about 1/3 down from the top. I also prepared a depth gauge. The ends will ride on the tenons on the end of the cylinder. The center can move anywhere in between, but especially at the low part. Another dowel through the center is the depth probe. Rubber bands on the dowels give just enough holding power to only slip when I apply pressure. For the first use, I need to set the middle piece and the probe to the current depth and location of my cove. After a bit more refinement, I can change to the second mount and start cutting more air and a little wood with my large bowl gouge. I stop a couple of times to check my depth. At this point, I'm also using a pencil to gauge and compare the width of each facet. Then switch to the third axis and continue. I switched axes back and forth until it looked good. Looks like I lost some footage here. With the eccentric part complete, I now have mounted the wood between tenon faceplates on both the headstock and live center. I need to carefully round over the top, getting rid of the tenon. For my convenience as a right-hander, I have swapped ends so that I can more easily access the base for the same but inverted process. The base needs to be concave. To clean up the ends, I have mounted my sanding pad to a No. 2 Morse taper 1/4 inch collet. As wood turners, we do not often use collets, but this is very handy for me to use instead of a Jacob's chuck. A drawbar holds the collet and the sanding pad in place, whereas my Jacob's chuck used to work loose unless I kept constant pressure on it. Finally, apply walnut oil that I will buff in a couple of days when dry. I also insert the metal cup for the top end and epoxy weight in the bottom for ballast. That completes this candlestick, a complement to last week's candlestick. It is shorter and more regular than last week. Next week I will turn an eccentric candle for my candlesticks. This will be fun. Please give this video a thumbs up, subscribe on my website, and tell your friends. I appreciate your comments and questions. Every week I make another wood turning video and add it to my website. Please wear your full face shield for safety anytime the lathe is running. I will see you next week with another wood turning video. By the way, if you are feeling down, time to count your blessings. It will help.